Okay, so welcome everyone to the Torus community meeting for August. Thanks for joining us. I hope today we'll have a lively discussion. It's a topic that touches everyone. So let's just dive right in. So today's topic is teaching and practice. So this is basically about using OLI delivery tools when you're delivering a course to students. So things like gradebook, roster, even the help desk experience, assessment settings, gating and scheduling, all of these types of things that you as an instructor need to do to teach with an OLI course. Getting your students in, making sure that you're grading them the way you want, and that you can do things like set up your TAs, and I can imagine grouping as part of this as well. So some of this, the LMS or the learning management system that you use can do, but because we want even tighter integration with the LMS, we'd like to know what are those tools you use even in your LMS all the time that we might be better served as a Torus functionality, and those things that you think you don't need because the LMS does such a good job at it. So know that we're building Torus with the latest LTI capability so that it integrates pretty seamlessly with any learning management system. So keep that in mind as we talk through these things. So for the discussion today, I'd be interested in what features of OLI delivery do you use when you teach? What do your students use? What are the expectations that you have when you encounter a system like this, a platform that has courseware on it? Maybe things that you've experienced in other systems that you're like, wow, I wish OLI did that. Or what are even some of your pain points? What are things that are really hard to do that you just wish you had the tools to do with your students? And then again, back to that idea of, what's necessary to rebuild in OLI because the LMS just does a terrible job of it, or what are things that you just know that the OLI platform needs to have because the LMS doesn't. So Hal Turner, for those of you who know him, he's our head of support and customer success, gave me some bullet points of things he's thinking about and he's encountered as he's supported folks who use the platform to teach. And so just to give you guys some more ideas about things to think about and talk about in this meeting, here are some bullet points he's given me. And let's see, I can't even move my Zoom mirror. Okay. So, things like an instructor review mode is something that we've never had, but I'm sure you guys would find pretty necessary. Embedded links for sharing feedback, tooltips. That's just platform side. I'm just going to go through these slides really quickly, and then I can go back to any of these as you need to. Gradebook, being able to provide, this is something we hear all the time, being able to provide participation points for the formative assessment. Some things that might help people see and use the gradebook a little easier. And then some general administration tools that he could think of, embedding, being able to check for things like, is my LMS already on the list and it's already something I can easily use a component, an OLI can be embedded in my LMS very easily, or things around requesting that or finding out more about that. Something he encounters a lot is, and something that's happened more and more over the years, is being able for students to be able to get codes from their bookstore to enter the courses. Inclusive access tools that help for making arrangements for inclusive access. And then getting started and help desk stuff again, like things that we know we need to do, but are there certain topics that if we were going to prioritize developing some how-to videos, like what are I need these 3 topics more than anything kind of thinking. So with those kinds of thoughts and ideas to prime the discussion, I really want to hear from those of you who actually use OLI to teach with, to let me know, what are some things you would expect in a new platform? And, of course, please feel free to also tell me things that you want us to keep and not redesign because, you really use this functionality and it's fine the way it is. So any of those ideas are up for grabs in terms of discussion elements. So who would like to go first? Who's feeling brave and chatty today? Yes, Natalie, please.
All right, thanks, Erin. I think those are all really good ideas. I wanted to say that um, the way that it is with not being able to integrate into the LMS, I like that the grade book, I feel, has done its job. But then, of course, you have to go and take those grades and put them into the LMS. So I think the integration is a great idea. One thing I've seen in other LMSs or in other language learning platforms online in the gradebook is that they'll have different categories for formative and summative, and they'll kind of spread it out. It's not just formative and summative, but it's the different types of activities, whether those are by a certain objective or whether they're in language classes, listening, speaking, reading, writing by the skills. I've seen them do it different ways, or quiz versus homework, and sometimes they let the instructor make their own categories and the weighting of those categories, which I've really appreciated with some of the other um, online language ebook platforms, basically. So you can set the weighting of the category of each of the activities. That's one thing. You also had on there instructor resources, PowerPoint, ancillary materials for teachers, and I've heard that from folks too that they'd be interested. So I think that those are some great ideas. Basically, just echoing what you already have there. I think are great ideas. But the grade book weighting would be my big thing. Although if you're going to be able to easily integrate the gradebook into the LMS, I'm not really sure how that would work if with the weighting and the things like that.
Yeah, the way I understand it works now, the way Torus works now is that if you have a graded page in a course, then it becomes automatically a column in the LMS grade book. And then you have controls to be able to say, well, no, I don't want to be grading on this, or to add, I believe, to that. I don't know how you would add to it. So I gotta look into that more. But that's the way it's working now. So there is no exporting and importing of grades anymore. It's kind of really seamless, and the controls for that are embedded in the platform. So that's how it works already. But I like this idea of being able to apply weighting is something that I've heard before. And I don't know how it's done in the LMS, but yeah, we should definitely look into
Yeah,
doing
I think
more of that.
Vista Higher Learning does it. So I'm trying to remember the categories I had. I think I had participation category, and then I had like homework, and then quizzes essentially. And that was in addition to the things that it didn't integrate into my LMS. So I still had to go in and do it individually, but it kind of
Hmm.
saved me that step of having to go in and look at a percentage and see, okay, which categories did they do? So I could look at that.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. That's really helpful. And then ancillary instructor materials, I imagine you're thinking about things like um I think you mentioned this, like additional PowerPoints, and we talk with Dave Aaron about this all the time, additional active learning opportunities by objective, so that like
Mhm.
as you're looking at the dashboard and you say, okay, all students seem to be struggling with this skill, then like you kind of have an extra resources per skill to say, okay, we're going to use this in the classroom now as an activity because I see that data. So it's kind of things like that. So additional PowerPoints, um, active learning exercises.
Yeah, in
Um,
particular, I've heard instructors say, "Oh, I do project-based learning, and I've made all of these projects. I'd love to be able to share them with other people using the platform." So, folks willing to share what they already have for project-based learning rubrics, things like that. We don't currently have
yeah,
rubrics in the
yeah,
language apply course.
yeah, great. And rubrics in general are just like, that's additional. Just having rubrics, especially now that we have the ability to do instructor graded very easily. We have the capability for students to upload a file as response to a prompt. So I haven't looked at that functionality in a while since it was first introduced, but I can imagine rubrics would be the next thing we need to add to that. For sure. And we definitely want the ability for more instructors to share with each other. So there's like that whole piece that I can imagine would be like a whole like area, of the platform that could be used for that. Great ideas, great ideas.
Thanks.
What else? Anything else that folks can think of? Did those lists give you anything you haven't thought of before? Yes, Sebastian. Oh, I can't hear you. I wonder why.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you are.
I haven't been here in a while, so I may be way off base here if this doesn't apply. But
It's fine.
The couple things that I find interesting is that taking a step back before I take a step in is looking at the use cases of this. So we seem to be reasoning under the impression that the primary use case for this will be people who use this in conjunction with an LMS.
Yeah.
As opposed to people who will use the OLI courses as standalone. So that means that if you're talking about an institution, it may make sense because most institutions of higher learning may have, and even K through 12 institutions for that matter, at least at the high school level, may already have, Canvas or Blackboard or
Right.
or whatever.
But that isn't just the use case I'm thinking of, though, by the way. So if
so if you're an independent learner and all you have is OLI, then how does that apply? Or can we think of, you're talking about teaching as practice, so you're already assuming an instructor. So if you are an instructor and you don't have access to an LMS, are some functionalities going by the wayside because we assume that they're going to be performed by the LMS when they in fact won't?
Well, we did set out to design it that way, but what we found, of course, as you can imagine, is not everybody uses an LMS. Not all instructors use an LMS. And then independent learners are just like another category, and probably I'll probably hit that with another meeting in the future. Like what is needed for independent learners to really take control of their own learning and be able to do that. So for today, it could be both instructors that use an LMS. And so I do say, are there features, not only are there features that that the LMS does really well that we can just defer to, but are there also features that LMSs don't do very well that we should build out more functionality around? But we also are thinking about, okay, I'm just an instructor without an LMS and I want to deliver this to my students. I want to use a flipped classroom. And so, yeah, what are those things that are needed by even those instructors?
Right. And so then the other bit that struck me in the presentation is that, and again, this may be way off base because it's maybe beyond the purview of this, but is that we assume that most activities are going to be individual activities. And you were talking about grouping, and this is something that strikes me as paramount in the way moving forward that's going to be in demand is how do we foster student collaboration, group work, flexible groups and therefore develop kinds of activities and ways to grade them and integrate them in the gradebook that account for this. So by that, I mean, do we have discussion board facility? Do we have, how do we integrate? I mean, we have a chat tool now and a digital annotation tool. How is that going to get potentially integrated? How do we form groups, reform them, rebuild them, switch them on the fly? And how does that integrate with the grade book? It'd be hard to imagine for me, even, and I know this is something that Natalie has thought a lot about, even in the case of having independent learners who may be grouped or become part of a cohort and some, how does the platform in and of itself takes that into account so that we don't have to rely on the also clunky discussion board function in, say, Canvas, for example, or or threaded conversations, or these kinds of things, or group chats, or
Yeah.
So,
And you bring up an interesting point because it's something people ask for all the time, or discussion boards. And I think I have quite a lot to say about all of these things that you've mentioned. So our take has always been, nothing should be happening unless it's in service of the learning objectives, right? Or that is in service of the learning objectives. So we don't want just a regular old discussion tool where you tell students to just go and chat about a thing. We really want to encourage group work and discussions that are tied to outcomes. So I know that's one of the things we really want to be able to do. And so we've been, I think, hesitant to build some of these or reconstruct some of these tools that exist out in an LMS. Not because we think the LMS does an excellent job at it, but because we want to be careful in how we allow that to happen. If it's not in service of the outcomes, then use the old discussion board in the LMS. But if you really want to collect data about these discussions, then that's a whole other thing we have to think about. And I can tell you, all of these things that you've mentioned here, the discussion board, chat tool, digital annotation, being able to form groups and manage that whole piece around group work. And this is interesting, which is why I put it down specifically, and how that works with the grade book. Like, so you give a group a grade that should populate, you should have some control over how it populates to their individual grading, right? All of that is something that we are really talking about all the time in service of a great Gates grant that we have. So we have a Gates grant to build an exemplar chemistry course. And so we're in a lot of discussions about how we build that out to allow for more application type activities, because that's something that's really important to the folks, the folks building the curriculum for that chemistry course, which, by the way, Dave Aaron's involved in that. And so as a result of that, we're really super hyper focused on what's the best ways to do that. So these things are all pieces of functionality that are on the list of things that need to be built to support an exemplar chemistry course. So I can imagine that eventually we will have these things. So I'm glad you mentioned them, because they're things we're thinking about, and that validates that list of things that we're thinking about. Some of these are going to be challenging. The group management is something that's really challenging, or even being able to, what kind of data do we collect from these discussions? And I'm excited because the future is going to give us a lot of data, both quantitative and qualitative, around these things.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is, again, I don't know a whole lot about that space, but I'm just trying to imagine, some of the ways in which even CMU is going, in terms of Dietrich, having somebody like Kim Piat, for example, who is doing like experiential learning. So you're trying to build these courses, at least when I build courses, and I have for a while around projects and that kind of thing. So you want to be able to build that functionality, like peer editing or peer feedback, or just feedback, iterative processes, how to integrate feedback, so all of these has tangible outcomes, like there is actually language or produced by the students that is, or rating of their peers, or et cetera, that is part of the way they are being evaluated and the way they think about their work and so on and so forth. Where is the backbone that actually documents this? Because if it's just checking boxes and, in my case, correct verb conjugation in the vocabulary, the functionality of this is going to be extremely limited, right? Going forward,
Yes.
for me at least.
Right. Well, I think we're trying to expand, I mean, based on a lot of the work that like Carolyn Rose has done,
Mhm.
in terms of Bazaar and capturing that qualitative data from those language discussions, or from those discussions, using the
Right.
tool. We've learned a lot about how we can do that. And I think now is the time we're going to start really applying that as we build out new functionality that I don't think, some of which doesn't exist anywhere else. Annotation tools
No.
are great, but now what
Yeah.
if you could do annotation, and I know this already exists out there too, and like share those annotations or understand, I as a student have the same misconceptions that another student has. Okay, now can I reach out to that person and let's talk more about it. And so we're extending that not only to just capturing, but actually facilitating more direct conversations from student to student, student to instructor, instructor to student, all of those.
Mhm.
So it's really fun.
Yeah.
Start to think about what's possible.
Well, this is great because it points to, I mean, as it facilitates teaching as practice, it also facilitates teaching as research, in the sense that, I mean, for people who are looking at language development, over time, you can really look then at this sort of microgenetic or macro interactions between students, or and track developmental processes over time, at least in my case, with regards to language and culture, but I'm guessing in other cases with regards to understanding of mathematical concepts, for example.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point too. And we have to keep that in mind. So with all the functionality we're developing in Torus, I try to keep, what I was calling like swim lanes in mind. So we're developing for the student, the learner, first and foremost, but then we have to also develop for the instructor and the supports the instructor needs, for content developers, learning designers, researchers. So, every piece of functionality has to we have to look at it through each of those lenses to make sure we're building stuff that works for all those. And then the data collection and analysis, which I consider its own like kind of layer that we have to think about for every piece of functionality we build. Okay, what's the data we need? How are we going to get it? Where does it go? What does it feed? And I think those are the main ones that I'm like constantly like, okay, let's look at it from this angle. Now let's look at it from that perspective and make sure we're building it for all of those at the same time and not just one. So yeah,
Thanks.
I'm excited about thinking about this, because I don't know that too many other platforms have really done that, like really thought of it from all those different use cases. So yeah, I'm really excited about all of it.
Aaron, I was glad that you mentioned, sorry, I guess I can show my face. I was glad you mentioned annotation, because obviously that exists in a kind of exemplar when it comes to perusal.
Yes.
Because as you were talking about groups and individual input, I was absolutely thinking about simply saved annotations. That's nice, because let's say that there's just a way for the software to reset after a certain number of days, but to retain the annotations from the previous 10 days. Like, there could be ways to basically sync that to where there's not a lot of work on your end. It's just that the file will clear of annotations after a certain number of days, so it doesn't get very crowded. Or you could have the file clear, after a certain number of annotations. So I was thinking about annotations too. It looks like someone in the chat was like, yes, exactly. Okay, but you know what I would really like? If we're talking about, and this isn't, for me, for the work that I do at my institution, this is just in general starting to think a little bit outside of the box.
Awesome.
Concept map sharing, Miro board. Like, this is, everybody asks me about this. I've given some presentations on it at my school. Everybody asks me about it, even if I'm doing a presentation that's not on it. Everyone loves Miro and concept maps. My husband and I were talking about facilitation yesterday and how basically across the board, teaching, facilitation, everyone and their mom is using Miro.
Yes.
And this is a good way for students to work together. It allows for more active sharing of ideas. So if you're gonna make a discussion board and you're going to do all these other things, why not have concept map tool embedded?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's so necessary for teaching and learning is the ability to not only review and explore concept maps, but also to be able to create your own, and then also to create your own in a group situation, right? I really would like to think that and do believe that we're going to build a lot more things in terms to support more social and peer-to-peer learning opportunities, because we know that, I mean, the research is really been there for a while that that's the best way to learn, or one of the best ways to learn, is by digging in with your peers and really figuring things out. So we do want to support more of that. And concept map alone, I mean, just having a concept map tool or activity type even,
It
I've
should be
thought
an
of that before.
activity type, perhaps, yeah.
But
And
then
it's not too hard either. Like, I've forced students to use PowerPoint, so the level of complexity you need to embed in that tool is really low.
yes, it really is. You just need a place for people to share, have a shared space to capture their ideas and to give feedback on each other's ideas. So yeah, great. Thank you for mentioning that. And let me look at the chat here. So yeah, lots of love for that idea. And yes, we want to be able to support things, more collaborative type learning. But the trick is how, we want to make sure we do it in service of outcomes and can collect data on it. So I think we've come a long way to be able to do those types of things. So thanks, Lauren. That's a great idea.
The other thing about the concept map tool, if it exists, is it doesn't just work well in groups. It also is useful individually.
Yes.
Serves kind of a different purpose, but that tool doesn't just serve the group work.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, concept maps are something that I've always gravitated to, not only just for facilitation, which I've used a lot in, but just for my own understanding of things. Like, as I'm working through a course, being able to kind of draw my own concept map is such a powerful tool to remembering and seeing connections between things and seeing a bigger picture kind of unfold as well as you're doing that. So it's actually a really great learning tool.
The other thing that would be nice in like my little fantasy land, Erin.
Yeah, I love your fantasy land. Bring it on.
So, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is basically encouraging best practices for instructors, right? So, one of the ways to encourage it is to require it. And obviously, the fact that the first page when you open any course is the syllabus, I mean, part of that is just an organizational visual for students, right? But concept maps are also an excellent thing for instructors to have as a way to like basically easily embed images that help show the students where they're at in the course. So it could also be a way, it might be helpful to be able to more easily develop that inside the course for that organizational piece, because I see more and more instructors that are basically showing their students concept maps for where they are in courses. So the same principle applies for moving through modules. So it's nice for students, but it's not something that should be overlooked. If you develop it for students, then that also means that maybe the particular algorithms that you have them and we can leverage them to make concept map diagrams for helping our students move through the course visually.
Yeah, it is one of our best practices that we tout. And prior to having the ability to really do concept maps online in an application, we always, I mean, one of the first things we always try to do when designing a new course is to come up with that big picture, which essentially should be a concept map. And it's really supposed to play a role to say, okay, at the beginning of every unit or beginning and end of every unit or module, to say, yeah, you are here in this bigger learning, just in this bigger picture of the learning that you're going to do. And ideally a big picture should also connect to something external as well. Like, here's the domain and here's where you are. here's the piece you're learning in the larger domain. And I have to say, it's always been challenging to do that. And it's always been done as sometimes an afterthought. 'Cause sometimes it's easier to do when you have all the pieces of a course than to do it prior. But I believe it, as part of design, it should be done kind of both. It should be done at the beginning to help make sure your design is going to hit all of those pieces and that the connections are made for the students, but then also at the end to refine it and say, okay, now we're going to really create a you are here map for the students. But we've fallen short, I think. And we usually do that with just pictures. Whereas now there's, I think, a lot more tools available to us to be able to make it more interactive and help students maybe even take control of their own learning a little bit more, right? And be able to like explore it or add their own pieces to it. So great ideas that we can really take in a bunch of different directions. Yes, Sebastian, let's see here at the chat. Yes. Yes, it's very important, and you're right. I mean, the research is in that social learning is successful even if the learners don't have a very great grasp of the concepts. They still can explore and learn together, and it seems to be stickier and more transferable when they do that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's known, so we have to really start building tools. And if we want to be innovative and future thinking, then we need those tools.
Do you have the ability, you probably do, for embedded video questions? I don't know if that ability exists.
So tell me
Exists in
more.
Canvas. So in Canvas, probably in other platforms too, especially for people that are doing flipped classrooms and they're having students watch lectures outside of class, you can actually embed in the video at particular points, like gating. Students have to answer questions before they can proceed, and that forces students to pay attention and to be accountable for the information. So all of our materials in our course that we have for OLI, I mean, it's all written material, but we have a couple of videos, but we don't have embedded questions. But that would be really helpful technology, I think, if you don't already have it wrapped into what you have, because so many people, they want students to be able to watch videos, but then you don't know if they've watched the videos. So the way you know that they've watched it is the quiz is part of the video.
Yes. So yeah, what we usually do, because we haven't had that functionality in the past, is to say if you're going to put a video in a course, you should follow it up with some questions to make sure not only the students get the point you wanted them to get and the outcomes that you expected from them watching that video, but that it can also tell you if they watched the video. So we already have built in the ability to do video capture right within the system. So both, I think, to answer a question or for instructors to add some video content to their courses easily. This idea of gaining questions within videos. So this is something what Articulate does really well, right? Like that's what most people use to do that, I believe. And so I am already exploring ways to be able to integrate Articulate content into our platform as well. So even if we don't develop it outright, we definitely will at some point be able to embed and interoperate with technology that does do it. So and I think that will probably come first, and then we'll probably collect some data on it and see how much it's used and how well it works, and then see if we want to develop any more functionality around it to allow it to be done a little more easily. But yes, good suggestion though, because it is something that I frankly get asked about a lot. People really love that ability, and it's great. It's great to be able to make students kind of pause and think about what they're watching, especially because we know students love videos, and we also know that students don't learn that well from videos. So it would be great to really collect some good data around that.
Yeah. Aaron, we do
Yes.
something similar to that in the French, which was designed under the original OLI framework, where we actually play portions of the video and have questions based on that. And we could probably do something very similar where we'll show the first segment, have the question, have the students answer the question. The next segment would be a next question in a exercise grouping, and that would be the next video segment with the questions to respond.
Yeah, and I have seen some, I think even some Everly courses have this ability because they did a special integration with some sort of technology at the time. I don't believe it was Articulate. And if it was done as a one-off. It wasn't done in a way that where anyone can upload their Articulate learning object and make it and have it play easily. So I have seen some of that functionality, Mark, in some of the courses, and I think those were special one-offs, and we want to make them less one-off and more easily able to produce more of that stuff.
Yeah, I could show you an example in the French if you want.
Oh, okay. What's this, Natalie? What did you? Okay, let's play. Pause it.
Yes, I was just saying the way we have it set up in French, it's still a little clunky in that, they watch and it stops. And the way that I've seen it on Play Pause It is, I mean, the way you have it in French is better than nothing, but this site called Play Pause It, it's very similar to what was being just described, where the students watch a video and there's a couple of dots so they can see before where the questions are going to be. The teacher can program it where they can have to listen to it only one time through or several times. And there's all different types of questions that you can put in, open-ended, multiple choice, drag and drop, etc. And for listening comprehension for language class, it's really ideal. And that's one reason when I was working at Pima Community College and we took the OLI course and we used some of it, but then we made our own Play Pause It videos for listening comprehension, with YouTube videos and things like that. But you could also do it with like a Loom video, or for non-language classes, like I believe Lauren was mentioning, just stop here and respond to this thing to make sure that students are engaging and watching. So I just put the link there. I think Edpuzzle is similar. There's a lot of sites that do the same thing. But just like that would be helpful to look at the technology there and see how they do it.
Fantastic. Thanks for those examples.
Yeah, of course.
Because it is nice to get a variety of examples and not just go with like one that I know does it, right? What was that, Mark?
Do you want to take a quick look at what we're doing in French?
Yeah, I would love to. Here, let me stop
Okay.
my share and allow you to share. There you go.
Oh, to share the sound. Okay, so this is exercise.
Bonjour Madame Morin.
Bonjour Monsieur Durand.
So stops. What are they doing? Greeting. They go on to the next question.
Ah,
Bon, au revoir.
Au revoir Madame Morin.
that's
Now,
special
we do
magic
it.
you're doing. Yeah.
It is a standard OLI.
Not to other courses. This is something standard OLI to language courses. So that's another thing we want to be able to do. So I'm glad you guys came, because every course that we've developed in OLI has some little special capability that what isn't available natively in our authoring environment, right? Like I guess anyone that had the XML could probably do what you did if they got your example in the XML and did it. But authoring tools, and even the courses that we've developed have been developed kind of in silos, so that each course has some kind of special, I find out all the time, some special activity type or functionality that the other courses and teams that built those courses didn't use or didn't know existed even to use. So thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. So we'll have to take a look at that and maybe even enhance it, right? And make it easy to author, because if we're going to move out of the XML and into an authoring environment, and by the way, when we migrate your courses over, that's functionality we would have to build, and then it would be available to everyone.
That's why, because it's a big part of our course.
Yeah, it is. And it's important. It's something that it's asked for all the time. And we can say, okay, it's done in our language courses, but how do we allow others to do that easily? Not everybody has a team of folks who, can dedicate to course development, which is, so we want to make these
The team is one person plus a content author.
But yeah, well, you've done amazing work. Okay, so since I think Lauren came on a little late, I can go back to some of the ideas that we were floating around that Lauren, you might have missed in terms of discussion points to see if it jogs any other things that you.
Sorry, so sorry
Oh no,
about that.
don't be sorry. It's fine. I just want to keep the discussion going. So there might be other things that we haven't touched on that are important. So we've talked a little bit about instructor resources and tools. Let's see. Feedback, embedding links for sharing user feedback. That could be part of some peer tools. And then let's see, what else do we have here? I mean, dashboards are a whole other thing on their own, right? That I haven't even touched on. I think I had one meeting like last year around dashboards. And we've kind of held off on because we really want to be comprehensive in our development of dashboards. So there'll probably be more meetings dedicated just to that. How about this? Something I just encountered in showing some new instructors the platform recently, and it was the legacy platform that I was showing them. They were kind of taken aback by the fact that the gradebook and the learning dashboard were separate things. Which the thought never occurred to me that those maybe should be more integrated, because you want to be able to answer a lot of the same questions looking at both of those together. So any functionality you guys have learned, have found out in the wild around gradebook controls, besides just being able to make sure that an LMS and a platform can talk to each other and share those grades?
Any way you can duplicate the efficiency of Gradescope is value added. Everyone's using Gradescope now.
Okay.
So, the beauty of Gradescope is like you can change how you're grading something, I guess, halfway through an assignment, and it'll even regrade individual responses. So I don't personally use Gradescope for a course that I teach, but so many people that I know are using Gradescope.
Okay,
So if
that's really helpful.
if you're looking for one of the best things on the market for efficiency in grading, everyone's using Gradescope for efficiency as a model.
Okay.
And there's a lot of free online sort of tutorials about Gradescope.
Mhm.
So that could be a thing for you to kind of consider when you're thinking about the gradebook.
That's great. Thank you, Lauren.
And obviously I love on here that you have, where is it? Oh no, that's percentage in points earned. Sorry, I was reading what I thought I wanted to be reading, which is I still want completion-based grades. I'm always gonna we're all about completion and percentage completion. So I still would love that functionality. And I think I was reading that at the top, but we've talked about that before.
Yeah, we have. And that's something that it's out of all the things we've discussed today, probably one of the most requested things. And it's funny because we always say, well, we don't want to penalize students for for practicing, and so we just want to be careful about how we do. It doesn't mean we don't give instructors the ability to actually provide participation points. And by the way, students are more motivated to actually practice if they're getting points for it. So some lessons learned over the years for sure, to foster ungrading. So say more about that. Is that kind of what I was just talking about, Sebastian, or are you thinking about something different?
No, I'm just thinking that it's not going to be a popular idea because people are still really wedded to grades, and so are institutions. So if you say we're going to build a course where grades is not really going to be the focus, they kind of going to disappear in the background. We're just
Okay,
going to
no.
focus on learning. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be super popular.
Right. It sounds great in theory, but then the students don't do the work. And then and the teachers don't have a good you know, thing to toggle to motivate them, or to even, I mean, yeah, I would love that everybody learns for learning's sake, but we know the reality of that is not necessarily the case. So yeah, it sounds wonderful, but we need to be able to give instructors actually like maybe more creative ways of grading, and steer them in the direction of encouraging students to practice more. And and then there's this whole idea that I hate to even mention, but like a lot of folks are also focused on, you know, catching cheating and cheating detection, and how, yeah,
Focus on mastery and development rather than attainment.
yeah, yeah.
But
But
that's really not your problem as a tool designer. It's more of the instructor's problem in terms of pedagogy. So
yeah, but we do have to like enable some, like we have to make sure that like our software plays nicely with some like proctoring softwares and things like that. Yeah, I have to admit, like learning designers, at least most learning designers I know kind of roll their eyes at cheating and cheating detection, mainly because like you just said, it's not really our problem, it's the problem of the instructors, but it is a problem, and it's become more so with internet and social media. I mean, like people can just post stuff out there, and then what happens? Then what do you do? So yeah, it's a whole topic that I'll keep separate from the rest of this. Okay, so gradebook ideas. Let's see. I think we did some of these.
So I know what you mentioned, you brought up, someone mentioned in the chat on grading. They just taught this course about teaching with writing and writing as learning. I think that's an interesting direction to go if you're going to consider ungrading. So that also fits into the completion based piece. If you're just giving credit for students doing something, then you can have them do like a 4-sentence response to something and not plan on grading it. So if you are going to consider things that don't have to be graded, then that really opens up the box to using writing a little bit more as helping students learn.
So you'll be happy to know that we've already built a lot of functionality into Torus at the moment to allow for that. So first of all, we have a more of a long response activity type that I imagine it can still be evaluated too by the machine to determine correctness. However, I can imagine that getting more robust with advancements in AI and, you know, character recognition, stuff like that. And we have a long form paragraph type. It's kind of similar to our old submit and compares, but there's no compare. So those would be probably either instructor graded or used for reflection activities, ungraded type activities. But now we also have the ability to upload any file type for grading, and it actually has a nice interface for the instructors to, you know, be able to go through and grade those assignments and push feedback back to the students. And I haven't demonstrated that functionality yet, I think, but it exists, and so it'll be definitely included in the next demo. So yes, we are building in more capabilities for writing assignments. I think the trick is, and Lauren, you really hit this on the head, which is instructors need to start using it more as a tool to not only help students, you know, use writing more to solidify their learning, but also as a way for instructors to see that and maybe even not grade it, just to have them go through the exercise of writing what they know. I can remember it's like one of my favorite instructors had tests where you could just like rate everything you know about this topic. And those were my favorite assignments. My absolute favorite. I'm like, okay, I'll tell you everything I know about this. And I probably did better on those assignments than if I had taken a test or a multiple or quiz or something like that. Because I felt like it made more connections for me in writing all of that out. And whereas a test, I would get a little more nervous about, am I getting the right answer, you know? So I think that's a great idea to foster and uh, provide more functionality around allowing those more types of assignments like that.
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Anything else that people can think of that hasn't been brought up? Just gonna toggle through these a little bit more. You know, we probably want to do more outreach around administrative stuff because I know like in the last few years, you know, these types of things, like I said, Hal gave me this list are on his mind because he's seeing more and more need for functionalities to support easier administration of online courses and flexibility, you know, where we don't just have the ability for students to pay us directly, but also be able to use the bookstore more. And then there's now these ideas where some schools will just like pay for this inclusive access ideas where they'll pay for the students to be able to get books for their courses. And so they actually are given kind of vouchers or whatever to allow them to access or get their books and other materials that are needed for the classes a lot easier and without having to pay upfront. So I know you guys probably aren't usually in the weeds with administrative tools, but if you can think of anything you've heard that you need or that your students need to make that easier to get access to these things. I got nothing. Thanks, Sebastian. Okay. That's good too. That's fine. I'm just trying to like spark some other ideas.
No, these are valid questions really to work with bookstores and things like this. But, you know, outside of, you know, what you were mentioning already, which is, you know, if there is a code, an access code, you know, make sure that it can be provided to, say, the bookstore representatives who are doing this work of you know, there's some institutions that are amazing at just packaging, you know, as a student, you can, you go in and you say, okay, you email your bookstore, so these are my 5 courses this semester. And they will actually package the books for you and put a price tag on it, right? So I mean, you know, it's that level of customer service, which you know is a little bit more than I can bear, but it's how it happens. But it only works if things like having a little thing with a because in the case of the OLI, so it's going to be, you know, whatever, $25, $40, whatever it is, you know, and then it's going to come with a code. So they need to have a way to put that physical object with the code and say, you know, this is going to be your French 101 textbook, and this is the class code, or the textbook code, or whatever it is. That's going to be, you know, that would be great. How to make that happen? That's where I got nothing, you know. But
yeah.
I know it's a thing, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, just being able to validate that, you know, that this is something that is increasingly not necessarily a problem, but a thing that's happening that we need to be make it easy, make it easier for folks, make it easy for the instructors who basically might not know who their LMS administrator is, might not know who their bookstore person is. They usually just fill out a form and everything just happens, right? Like, so yeah, we need to make sure that everybody feels that it's easy to do these things that are increasingly common. So yeah, thanks for just even validating that, you know that this is a thing that happens. And it's something worth looking into further about how to facilitate. Great. Well, I'm gonna give you guys like, I don't know, another 30 seconds to think about if there's anything else that you'd like to bring up and discuss, and then I'm gonna call it a meeting. We can just end early because I think I've gathered a lot of good stuff.
I had one quick thing about the fourth question, things possible to defer to the LMS.
Yeah.
I think that the announcement feature that's pretty common in LMS. I mean, you could build that into the OLI, but I don't think it's necessary because if a teacher isn't using an LMS, they're presumably, emailing their students or something like that. So
Yeah, good
I don't
idea.
think that would be,
Yeah.
at least not at like the top of my list or anything that I think LMS and email already seems to be.
Yeah. Great. Thanks. Thanks for that. That's really helpful. Because it is something we've been asked for. I have to admit, we've been asked for if we have, but nobody seems like too completely disappointed if we don't. And actually, even we have built in from the learning dashboard, you can email students. I don't even know. I do want to look into how much of that is actually used, because I know I would actually want to know like the percentage of users that use the learning dashboard, and then of those, what's the subset that actually use those nitty-gritty features of it. So
Mhm.
good to bring up.
These are really good questions. Thanks for putting it together. I might have other things that I come up with
Oh,
later.
please.
I always
Always
feel like
send me
after the
stuff.
meeting, things occur to me. We'll see, but this
Always. Thanks,
Yeah,
Sally.
we just need to continue to be able to connect it as an external
Mhm.
tool to Canvas, which you're never going to get rid of.
Right.
And then also we need the gradebook to continue to have that ability to be separate from our LMS because we don't want it embedded. And the easiest thing for us is, so Hal recently made another instance for us for one of our courses, which was excellent. But basically, that's been honestly the biggest headache from Echo, is just right now there's a complication where if we use the same thing in multiple courses, and
Mhm.
students have started doing it in one course, it's like it shuts it down. So things like that. So in terms of like the implementation delivery of OLI, I don't know if this is part of the question, but these are
Yes.
the sort of things that we have difficulties with on our end. Is we're like, oh, we need an extra copy or version of this course because of XYZ. And a lot of that's going to be streamlined in Torus, so I really don't have any concerns. And in terms of deployment, the trickiest part for deployment for us is just the timing, because yeah, the clock starts once it's used in one course and then other students can't get into it.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, so you're
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
an exciting thing, right?
yeah, but it's very interesting, and it's the kind of nitty-gritty that like we wouldn't get otherwise, right? Unless we have this conversation. So it's the ability to copy existing course sections easily. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so it actually, I think it has to do with the logistics of adding a course key into Canvas through the external
Oh,
tool.
yeah.
So in the external tool app, I can add a particular course key to 10 different courses if all of them are using the default version of my course. But then if one of those courses starts and students start using utilizing access to the course, I can no longer add that course key in any other courses. So I just had to have Hal basically make another copy of one of our courses, because I knew that some people are going to be starting it in early August and other people are going to be starting in late August. So that's also, though, because I know we're not using this the way it was intended. Most people, there's a 1-to-1 matchup, right?
I have
This
to tell
course-
you, we get this request often, I have to admit. Not
Okay,
as
not
much
just
as
us.
you guys use it, because you are a special use case. And essentially you want all that data to feed into one. You would ideally want all that data to feed into one place, even if it's from different courses, right? Different
Yes,
LMS
and
courses.
that is something we need to continue to retain, because otherwise it's a nightmare logistically for
Yeah.
us. And that's the other reason that we met with you a little while ago to talk about privacy issues, because all the kids get funneled into the same course. So we've already taken care of that issue with basically hiding access. So
Yeah, yeah.
I've already gone down that road, but these are my details about kind of how we integrate.
Yeah, and so did I capture accurately here? Like really decoupling the ability to embed an OLI course in a Canvas or LMS by not relying on the course key as the decoupling the course key from the LMS integration so that you could add that same course key in several shells, right?
Yeah, because the course key isn't a problem. The problem is that apparently that course key represents what becomes a time capsule once one LMS course starts. So it's okay to have it tied to a course key, and I don't think that'll ever change unless there's a big change. But sort of that time capsule nature of once a Canvas course or another LMS course, like the clock starts on it, that key can't be added to new courses.
Yeah. So decouple a course key as the only how to capture this, but I know what you mean. So and it's something that we get asked about all the time. It's the same as like getting asked about deep linking. For those of you who understand that term, deep linking is being able to build your LMS course with links directly to the places in the OLI content. You can kind of build your syllabus in the LMS and have links out to the very specific places in our course that aligns with your syllabus. And we don't allow that. We can't do that because of the way the LMS integration happens. So that's another piece of this, I think. So not only, and it's because of this situation where you can't have multiple courses linked from the LMS shell. So that would open a door to a lot of different things if we could allow for all that functionality to exist. Great, thank you for explaining that. And I think it's something like even, Sebastian was kind of thumbs upping in the chat, yeah. Well, great. So keep it coming. What are some other things like that are pain points, and just setting up your course and being able to get students in it? The course key works really well though, like being able to create your own course key and then just sharing that with students. I don't think that's ever been a problem or a hold up for anyone. I think I just mentioned the other real big one people ask for, which is deep linking and being able to, build your syllabus in the LMS with various links out to the OLI course. But does that spark any other ideas from folks?
Unrelated, but maybe sparked by what you just said and what Lauren was also saying is way to facilitate the work for instructors who are teaching multiple sections of the same course. So either merging sections or being able to visualize different sections at once, or I don't know what instructors prefer. I know I had instructors when I was at Tennessee who loved to merge all of their sections when they were teaching parallel sections of the same course, and so that everybody would have the same material all of the time, and others would prefer to keep it separate because they ran into like bottlenecks and stuff with some of it, so I guess once again, the one size fits all doesn't really work, but at least having that flexibility to organize your workflow as you deem most beneficial to you and your students.
Yeah, that's super helpful because like you said, you might not use that specifically, but people who have, and that flexibility is key. Being able to for an instructor to say, okay, here's how I want to manage these multiple sections. And then another instructor might want to do it differently or have to do it differently because of their institution, but making sure that we build in functionality to serve all those use cases is important. So thanks, Sebastian, for bringing that up.
We're also eventually really looking forward to the ability of it being really easy for instructors when they go in for the toolbox to be able to just kind of select the right version And that's something that I also think is going to be maybe easier in Torus. Like, I think that there's just going to be a lot more flexibility for very similar courses with sort of like, oh, I want this version. I think that, you know, a lot of these things are going to be almost like issues that we're having now are just like not even going to exist. So it's not even worth, you know, worrying about it.
No, but it's worth bringing up because I can't guarantee that the way we're building things is the way that they need to be built too. So this is really validating too for you guys to mention things that you even might know we've already worked on and are fixing or making better. But it's good to have that validation that that's something you really need and want. So yeah, we have this idea of products in Torus, but what I like about what you said is this is a problem I'm trying to solve right now, even our legacy system, is what's visible for others to build from, and how do you know you're getting the latest version? How are we able, I mean, my course list, when I go in to create a new course using the course builder, because I'm an admin, I have like every version of the course, and a lot of times those version numbers aren't even on there. So I have to like build the course to find out what version it is. And I know that's something that's probably unique to administrators. But more metadata around what you're actually building and when it was, you know, when it was produced, and just a lot more information to give instructors so they know that they're building what they want to and intend to.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the ways that could just really be easy to look at a glance is, so what we're hoping for eventually is basically, you know, we have this student cognition toolbox, like you want to have your students assigned to it. Like that's what you're selecting. And then you open that and you're like, okay, I have the chemistry, the physics, the biology, the default, like I have all these choices to choose from. Just check whichever one you want, right? So one thing that would be really, really easy and I think simple to do is you can have in parentheses, like last uploaded like this date, just right behind that. And I mean, and that's best practices, right? For people like me that are content editors. So
Yes.
you just encourage people, like, especially if it's something that you can't actually upload without including that information, like you stop and upload, then you know, okay, oh, that's not the right version if you're the editor like me. Or if you're from the outside and you want to use physics, but you're like, oh gosh, physics was last done like 5 years ago.
Yes.
So that information kind of really solves that question of, has this been recently vetted? So yeah, I guess I'm talking about kind of like two layers of stuff. So it's like the toolbox, and then within the toolbox, you click on the toolbox, but then you get the particular version.
Yeah, there's this idea of where where we use organizations now, those become products, and it's a lot clearer as products what those things are and what updates have been made to them and when. So all of that is better. I mean, like I'm actually going in now to see products. So let me see if I can, these are just my products then, I guess. And then these are projects. I want to see products. Browse all. Oh, that's why I went to the wrong place. So these products, and let me find one. Oh, here's one here, the RISE framework. So let's see. This is a product. So this is basically, in the old parlance, would be an organization of a package, right? For those of you who are versed in OLI speak. So now this would be like in the old legacy, it'd be one organization in a package. Now it's its own kind of standalone product that has its own flexibility, and you know about when updates have been made. You can have different, I mean, this is new to me too, by the way. I'm just looking at this. So you can be able to view usage. So you'll be able to have, so this is built specifically also with the idea in mind that as an administrator of multiple courses that other people use, how can I get more information about them? You could have different pricing on these, different gating and scheduling. And so it's it's a combination of organization and section setup. Because you could set up now a gating and scheduling on the product that then you don't have to keep recreating every time you create a new section, right? It's just, it comes with that. So this is all to say we are thinking of a lot more how to build in more flexibility than we have in the past around this stuff.
Aaron,
Yes.
who would have access to this information? Because this is the sort of thing I've been asking for a long time,
I know.
access, and will I ever have it?
Yes, and it would be the administrators or the product owners, the project owners. So it'd be in your case, you would have access to this, can create these. I actually will validate or find out like what roles exist in our system and how they map to these different views or functionality. But I believe this was built for the owners, for the course owners specifically, to have be able to put out multiple organizations and have more control and visibility into who's using their products.
Yeah, because when more and more institutions are making their own unique versions, when I get the feedback saying this page does not work, and I look at what I think is the page that they are talking about, and they've rearranged things and they've got their own organization, they pulled out section. Yeah, I never have a chance to see it unless I specifically ask help to put me into the course as a
Right.
observer so I can see what they're seeing rather than what what I can do to answer the question.
Yeah, I believe this all exists in the new system, Mark, but let me write this down to make sure that I can validate that it works in the way you need and that I kind of expect. So ability to troubleshoot for customized versions of the content is one use case for products that I want to check on. So before we roll it out and migrate your courses, definitely want to be able to tell you how you will be administrating all of what you do, for sure. So I just want to note this down so I don't forget to ask about that. Great. So that took us into, see, I knew we had more to talk about. If we really start thinking about like course administration controls and for folks like you, Mark, who administer and facilitate others and troubleshoot for others who are using your content. Yeah, page numbers is a whole like thing, right? This just came up recently because someone said, oh, well, I marked all the page numbers of things, of places where I want to customize my content. And I was like, like page numbers aren't the way to go because they're generated automatically by the system. So you really need to be capturing page titles. I'm sorry, that's just something that came up this week that I don't know we have a solution for, but trying to think of other little nuanced things like that just come up as part of administrating or delivering these courses. Because I know that's a hard thing for folks who like, carefully develop their syllabus against the OLI course, right? And they want to refer to certain page numbers and trying to think if there's any other use cases around that for functionality we need to develop to facilitate that better. I know as far as gating and scheduling, I believe there's even more functionality built in Torus than what was ever even asked for. I haven't explored it in depth yet, but it's been rolled out for a while now.
I can't wait. I cannot wait for students to not be able to proceed from one page to the next in a given module. Yeah. then they just can't jump to the quiz at the end. I'm living for that.
Yes, yes. And it's so funny because I was just looking at data on a course. Oh, I can't remember. This week's been really weird for me, but I was just looking at data where it was like super obvious. Like everyone was skipping the practice and just going right to the quizzes. And you know, of course, that's, you know, instructors are always asking, like, how do I encourage practice? Well, you kind of have to, unfortunately, probably give some points for it. Let's see. Anything else? Okay. Well, I think that brings our meeting to a close, almost at time. Thank you guys. Always. It's amazing you guys come with such great ideas and use cases. And it really does help every single user of our platform to hear from you. And so thank you for your engagement and your ideas. And of course, if you have ideas after this, if I've sparked any thinking beyond this meeting, of course, reach out to me, send me email, send me Slack, however you can get a hold of me. I'm always taking requirements. And by the way, I'm always taking those requirements, and my team and I have become really adept at like turning those into user stories, getting those in GitHub for the engineers to review as they're developing new functionality. So know that every single one of these meetings helps that process even more. So thank you all, and have a great weekend, and I will see you next month. Let's see, the topic for next month is, I don't have it on off the top of my head. It's going to be metacognitive skill building and practice. So Lauren, I hope you can come. It's on September 2nd.
That sounds like
right?
we'll definitely have to attend.
Yes, I think you're required attendance there. But anyone that has ideas about how to support more metacognitive skill building in their students, and anything is up for grabs, whether it be functionality, activity types, just ideas to just maybe even just BS a little bit about how we do this more as instructional designers and teachers, how we foster that with or without a platform, but ideally what can we build in to help facilitate that more. And so I look forward. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically like everyone should use the survey tool. That's
yes. And by the way, wait till you see what we've been able to do with the survey tool. In fact, maybe I should probably even give a little demo of that, since that's some of the latest functionality that's pretty cool. Just to spark ideas, because that's not the only way, but I want to think of other ways that we can do, you know, so think about that now, prime yourself, and come to that meeting September 2nd. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you. Have a great weekend.